Hello everyone and welcome back to the EL111 coursebook. In this video we're going to be going over the last part of Unit 1, Unit 1C, and in this part of the unit we're going to be talking about language and what are some great ways to learn a new language. We're going to be looking at different characteristics and what makes a person able to learn a new language in a fast, efficient, yet accurate way. So let's take a look here. We have a few questions in exercise 1, and I would like you to pause the video and take a look at them and try to answer them. Who is the best language learner you know? This could uh, be applied to perhaps a person that speaks really good English, like in your friend group, for example. Someone that every time you see them, like every few months, they just keep getting better and better. Maybe try to mention that person and ask yourselves, why are they so good? I mean, what makes them basically? What makes them so unique as to be able to improve rapidly as compared to their peers? And then we have a list that we're going to talk about afterwards. So pause the video for a bit, sit with these two questions for a little bit, maybe come up with your own way, your own ideas, because you know that person best as to what their strengths are. Let's take a look at the list here. It's not complete, but these are some of the things that, or rather characteristics that you'd notice in people that are good at learning a new language. They're usually motivated to learn. I mean, I think without motivation, you're not really going to be too interested. I mean, if you show up to class and you're kind of just like, I would rather be anywhere else but here, your own mindset is not even in the classroom. So your mindset is all wrong. So definitely not going to learn, or at least not as fast or efficiently as you could otherwise. B is positive about their abilities. And this one is quite unique because this again ties to your mindset, the fact that you believe in your own abilities to overcome a challenge. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't notice is their ability to look at a challenge and their mindset is, I can overcome this, as opposed to, oh, this is too difficult, perhaps this is not for me, this language is too hard. If you think that something is too hard and you stick with that mindset, it's probably best that you leave it, because you're just not going to go anywhere. You're going to come up with excuses the whole time. So being positive about your abilities is definitely a good characteristic to have, especially when learning a new language. Reads newspapers and websites in the target language. I think this is a good one, and it also applies to not just newspapers and websites, but just doing things in the target language. You'll see people that are good at English as a second language is they watch a lot of movies, they watch a lot of TV shows in the target language. They'll probably read books in their free time, maybe even newspapers. They'll visit the English internet, watch English YouTubers. All of these things, they do make an impact. You're getting a lot of experience without really noticing, because it's in your free time. It could be a hobby or something like that, but it does help. Then we have D, learns from their mistakes. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory. If they make a mistake, and even when they get constructive criticism, they don't take it personally, but rather they would like to improve it so that they don't make that same mistake again. And finally, takes notes in class. To follow up on the first point, if you're sitting in class, just not even mentally there, you can't wait for it to be over, you're thinking about lunch, then you're not really paying attention. And language learning is one of those things that's like, I'm going to compare it to working out, where the effort you put in is what you get back. So if you're not putting any work in, you can't expect to get results. Okay? So these were some characteristics. I hope your friends that are really good at a certain language have some of these characteristics. Now let's move on to exercise 2 here. And what we're going to be doing is, I'm going to play this audio file. You're going to be listening to a professor, and he's going to be talking about some characteristics, but just listen first, get a general idea of what the professor is talking about, and then we'll discuss this afterwards.
As a professor of language teaching, I'm often asked the same question. What's the best way to learn a language? Well, that's a very difficult question to answer because it depends on so many factors, such as what language are you learning? What languages do you already speak? What do you need the language for? And so on. But we do know from decades of research that most successful language learners share certain characteristics. So, I'm going to give you a profile of a good language learner. Broadly speaking, I can say that a good learner experiments with language and she takes risks. That's the first thing. And she is realistic. By realistic, I mean she knows that learning a language is not simple or easy. It takes time and effort. She accepts that sometimes progress will seem slow. Next, she is independent, meaning she doesn't just sit in the classroom expecting to learn. Instead, she is always looking for opportunities to learn, to practice, to improve. And, importantly, a good learner is able to find the right balance between accuracy and fluency. And by accuracy, we mean communicating correctly, not making mistakes or errors. And by fluency, we mean communicating freely and easily. Right. The final feature of a successful learner is that she thinks critically about her learning journey. By this, I mean she is aware of her progress and knows what she needs to improve. And she knows which methods work for her and which methods don't. Because we are all different and we learn in different ways.
All right. Okay. So now that you've gotten a general but pretty good idea about what the professor was talking about, now what I want you to do is take out a pen and paper, and I'm going to play the audio again. And what I want you to do is add 6 more characteristics that you hear from the audio. So you're going to be focusing on the characteristics. And then after that, I'll add my own characteristics as well based on what the professor has said, and then I want you to pause the video and compare yours with mine. So I'll play the audio again, take out a pen and paper, and start writing those characteristics down. Here we go.
As a professor of language teaching, I'm often asked the same question. What's the best way to learn a language? Well, that's a very difficult question to answer because it depends on so many factors, such as what language are you learning? What languages do you already speak? What do you need the language for? And so on. But we do know from decades of research that most successful language learners share certain characteristics. So, I'm going to give you a profile of a good language learner. Broadly speaking, I can say that a good learner experiments with language and she takes risks. That's the first thing. And she is realistic. By realistic, I mean she knows that learning a language is not simple or easy. It takes time and effort. She accepts that sometimes progress will seem slow. Next, she is independent, meaning she doesn't just sit in the classroom expecting to learn. Instead, She is always looking for opportunities to learn, to practice, to improve. And, importantly, a good learner is able to find the right balance between accuracy and fluency. And by accuracy, we mean communicating correctly, not making mistakes or errors. And by fluency, we mean communicating freely and easily. Right. The final feature of a successful learner is that she thinks critically about her learning journey. By this, I mean she is aware of her progress and knows what she needs to improve. And she knows which methods work for her and which methods don't. Because we are all different and we learn in different ways.
All right, so I hope you're able to write some of these characteristics down. I'll write my own now. So the first one that I noticed right away, some extra characteristics that people that are good at learning a new language tend to have would be is that they experiment with the target language. They allow themselves to make mistakes, talk to people in the target language, just get that practice in. And two would be realistic expectations. What we mean here, and what the professor mentioned, is you don't expect yourself, you don't expect to learn the target language in the span of like 6 months. You're not going to be fluent in 6 months, but you will be a lot better after 6 months as opposed to 0 months. Does that make sense? So knowing that it is a gradual and slow process, but it does show its benefits the more you do it. So having manageable and realistic expectations is definitely a must. And to follow up on that, actually, he also mentioned that progress might seem slow. And I think that's a given. I mean, you're learning a totally new way of communication. So at times, progress might seem that it slowed down or even plateaued. But as you move on and as you focus more on the things that you need to work on, there's definitely, you're going to be able to bust through that plateau as time goes on. The next one would be, let me see. Always looking for ways to use the language and improve. This is very similar to number 1. Oh, this is a typo. So always looking for ways to use the language is similar to experiment with the target language, but you're going, or that person is going out of their way to use the language and improve. So I don't, like we said before, aside from experimenting with people using the target language, say you're in class. You don't just sit in class doing nothing. You always look for new ways to perhaps talk to your classmates in the target language. Maybe you notice that one of your friends made a mistake, so you decide to work on that mistake yourself so you don't make it. Or you make a mistake and you decide to improve and work on it so that you don't make it again. That is what is meant by this point. All right, let's go to number 5. I think able to find the right balance between accuracy and fluency is a big part that was also mentioned in the audio. And notice how the professor said that accuracy is being able to talk accurately and without mistakes, and also having fluency. Fluency is when you're able to talk freely and express yourself freely without constraints. So having a good balance between the two is a good way to really improve with the target language. If you focus on just accuracy, you feel handicapped when talking, and when you focus purely on fluency, you make a lot of mistakes. So a fine line is definitely needed. Okay, let's go to number 6. I would say think critically throughout the learning journey. Being critical of your learning journey and understanding your weak points, and as you progress, you'll notice that you're better at certain things and you're weaker at other things. So focusing on those parts is a great way to bust through those plateaus that we talked about earlier. So having critical thinking as you're moving forward is a good way to get better at the target language. Then 7, no, we don't have 7. I think they mentioned 6. Yeah, just 6. So 1, experiment with the target language. 2, realistic expectations. 3, progress might seem slow. 4, always looking for ways to use the language and improve. Able to find the right balance between accuracy and fluency. And 6, think critically throughout the learning journey. I hope it doesn't have to be the same word for word, but your characteristics should resemble these in some way, shape, or form. If you wrote your own thing, then it's probably not from the professor, and it might be correct, but not what we needed. So make sure you go back to the audio and write these in your own words. So compare these, and I hope you got most of them, if not all. Now let's move on. Let's go to exercise. Let's go to the focus here, the pronunciation for a second. Here we have, okay, here we have another video that we're going to listen to. So we're going to be listening for words that are linked together and or shortened. So we talked about this also in the previous videos, some words that are shortened. How is to, okay, let's leave this for now. What I want you to do is listen to these words right here, words that are linked together, and just listen and see how they're pronounced.
A. So, I'm going to give you B. Learning a language isn't simple or easy. C. She's always looking. D. A good learner's able to find. E. She's aware of her progress.
All right, so this should give you a pretty good idea of how these words that are shortened sound. So this would be normally I am, but it's I'm. Is not becomes isn't. She is becomes she's. Learner is becomes learners. And she is, once more, becomes she's. Now, listen again, but this time I want you to focus on the word to in A and in D, and I want you to take a look at how they're pronounced.
A. So, I'm going to give you B. Learning a language isn't simple or easy. C. She's always looking. D. A good learner's able to find. E. She's aware of her progress.
All right, so if you notice in A, when I say, so I'm going to give you, this, I don't stress the to. I kind of use it as a bridge because I'm talking quickly. So I'm going to give you, that T is used as a quick bridge, okay? And if you see the same thing in D as well, a good learner is able to find. I don't stress the to that much. So again, think of it as a bridge that you're quickly passing through. You don't sit there, you move, keep it moving. So a good learner is able to find, okay? Now, let's go to exercise 4. Here we have 2 separate adverbs, and what I would like you to do is pause the video right now for a second, and not a second, more like a minute. So have 30 seconds for this one and then 30 seconds for the other advert, and take a quick look and try to guess what these adverbs are about. just a general idea. So pause the video and take a look at these. And then the continuation of the video will be assuming that you have a pretty good idea of what the adverts are about. Okay. So based on the quick glance that I took, and hopefully you took as well, we could see that the adverts are for some sort of learning school, and they claim that they teach English, but there's a few differences. So pause the video once more, and I would like you to read these to get a general sense of what is it that each school does and how do they do it. So take a minute for this one and take a minute for this one as well. And then once you come back, listen to what I have to say. Well, I won't pause the video, but you probably should. All right, so assuming you've now read the adverts, we could see that for this advert right here, the school focuses more on accuracy and correcting mistakes and teaching all the rules, basically taking their time, their very sweet time when it comes to teaching English. While on the other hand, you have this advert that is focused more on the important principles, trying to get you to learn the language as fast as possible so that you can start communicating as fast as possible. You're not corrected on all your mistakes only when they start messing with your communication. So you might miss a few things or mess up the grammar here and there, but they wouldn't correct you because it doesn't, like, your point has been made, and if others can understand it, then it doesn't matter. You don't even learn grammar because it says grammar rules are not taught. Okay. So, how are the schools different? We just discussed that. Which school do you prefer? This will be up to you. Again, I'd like you to pause the video and explain your answer. If you're watching this, if multiple people are watching this at the same time, you could explain it to each other. Which school do you prefer and why? I would personally choose the first one, and although it's a little too much at times, perhaps having to memorize all the grammar rules can be a bit overkill, but it's certainly, to me at least, better than the speakeasy, which is just do it as fast as possible so that you can start communicating as fast as possible. I just don't think that's a very good way of doing things. So yeah, this is my take on it. Hopefully yours is similar. If not, that's okay too. All right, let's go to exercise 5. We're going to be listening to two friends discussing one of these schools, and I'm going to play the audio just to get a general idea of what they're talking about and how they're talking about it, and then we'll discuss it afterwards.
This method seems good to me because I think teachers should always correct mistakes. In my experience, it's the only way people improve.
I'm not sure about that. I agree with Professor Hawthorne when he says that you need a balance between accuracy and fluency.
But how do people learn if they don't know what's correct?
Well, I've actually read a book about this, and the evidence suggests that if a teacher corrects every mistake, the students get nervous and don't speak in class.
All right, so before we discuss this, I'd like you to listen to the audio one more time, but focus on very specific details. So I want you to think about which school of these are they talking about. Is it the first one or the second one? And do they agree with each other when they're talking? And take out a pen and paper and also note some of the reasons that they give to talk about their opinions or to defend their opinions. So listen one more time and then we'll talk about it.
This method seems good to me because I think teachers should always correct mistakes. In my experience, it's the only way people improve.
I'm not sure about that. I agree with Professor Hawthorne when he says that you need a balance between accuracy and fluency.
But how do people learn if they don't know what's correct?
Well, I've actually read a book about this, and the evidence suggests that if a teacher corrects every mistake, the students get nervous and don't speak in class.
All right. So what I'm going to do now is go through these questions one by one and see if you had similar answers. So which school are they talking about? It's the first one. They're talking more about this one because this is the one that has you memorize all the rules, and they always correct students' mistakes. This right here gives it away. The fact that they correct every single mistake tells me that the two people were talking about this one. Because if you look here, it says, where does it say? Your mistakes are only corrected when they prevent communication. So you could make a lot of mistakes, but if your point comes across or your point is made, then they don't correct you on it. So that's why. 2, do they agree with each other? They do not. The correct answer is they do not. 1 is talking about how this is good for her and she thinks this is the best way to learn the language, while the guy thinks that no, there's other ways of doing this, and actually he quoted someone else, and we'll talk about this in a second. What reasons do they give for their opinions? All right, so take a look at what I'm about to write, and you can compare your answers. Again, like we said, it doesn't have to be word for word, but the general consensus should be similar. So the first reason was that the only way people improve is by correcting mistakes, or is by rather having their mistakes. I'm going to fix this. Give me a second. Corrected. All right. So the first opinion was that the only way people improve is by having their mistakes corrected. But then there was a reply to that said there needs to be a balance, like we said before, between accuracy and fluency. If you sway too much to one side, it becomes an issue. And to follow up on this, part of the reason why this is an issue, and then the guy quoted the professor, is that when teachers correct every mistake, students get nervous. Students get nervous, and we could also say something like, and become quiet in class. And that is exactly what you don't want. When someone is in class and they're not participating, they're not paying attention, that becomes an issue. So if every time a student is trying to use the target language and you as a teacher start correcting their every single mistake, nitpicking every mistake they make, they're going to get discouraged. That's the truth of it. And they'll start getting nervous, and they don't want to be ridiculed. They don't want to be the center of attention for everything that is negative, which is their mistakes. So they're just going to become quiet, and that's not what you want. And that is my main issue with this school right here. Okay? So these were some of the reasons that they gave for their opinions. Let's go to number 6. Here we have 3 different sentences, and this will show you a nice way, using some statements that give you the option to justify your opinion. So say you're in an argument or a conversation and you have an opinion, you can use statements in English to justify these opinions as to why you think that something is the way it is. The first one is going to be using clear evidence. So you could say something like, the facts or the research shows or show that, and then continue your sentence. I read an article, or I read a research paper that said that, and then you continue on with your evidence. You could also say something like, let me reset this. Well, if we're using evidence, then I think the word evidence is the most evident. Get it? So the evidence suggests that if a teacher corrects every mistake, and then go on with what you were going to say. So you have three separate ways to justify your opinion using evidence. Let's take a look at experience. So one of the ways that you could defend your opinion or justify it is you're talking from experience, something that's happened to you personally. So you could give them an example of something that you saw or experienced yourself. If we're talking experience, you can also say, in my experience, it's the only way people improve. When that girl was talking in the audio above, she said, in my experience, it's the only way people improve. So from what she's experienced so far, she thinks that correcting mistakes is the only way people improve. That's her experience. Usually, you're justifying opinion, but there's a very fine line between having your opinion and having an opinion that is wrong. You can justify an opinion that is wrong, just so we don't get things confused. You could definitely have an opinion and it could be wrong or it could be right. So just because you're justifying it does not mean it's inherently correct. Correlation does not cause causation, or something along those lines. All right. Referring to another person's opinions, and this is one of my favorites because this means you'll probably be quoting someone that is more knowledgeable than you, perhaps a professor or a scientist or someone that is more knowledgeable than you are. So in this case, it says, according to Professor Hawthorne, which is the professor that we listened to earlier, that person is quoting the professor, which is someone that is much more knowledgeable. Professor Hawthorne, you could also start with their name, claims that, yada, yada, yada. You could also say, I agree with, and then the name of the person, when they say that you need a balance, and then continue on. So again, quoting the other person, you do have to mention their name so that it tells the other person that, oh, you're referring to someone that is more specialized in this field than I am. Okay? So that was the three different ways to justify your opinions with some statements that can help you the next time you have an opinion that you think is worth justifying. Okay. Let's go to number 7 before we end the first unit here. This is going to be a little bit tricky, but I think this is a good way to practice your speaking. So imagine you have a friend, someone that wants to learn English and is choosing between these two schools above. We've talked a little bit about the differences and why each one has their flaws. So I want you to discuss which school is better for your friend. If you're with a group of friends, then you'll let each one speak for a little bit as to which school they think is better in each particular case for your friend. If you're at home, you can just pause the video for a bit and think of a friend, someone that needs to learn English, and then choose a school for them and why you think that school benefits them. However, before you do that, you're going to prepare for your speaking by following these 4 steps. So make notes about each of the 2 schools, focusing on the important things. So our grammar rules taught, they are not here, but they are here. Our mistakes corrected. Every single mistake is corrected here. This one, not so much. So keep these in mind. And then if you have evidence or quotations to support the method you prefer, include that. Again, this will start bringing you're going to start justifying opinions. So you could use evidence, you can use experience as well, or you can quote someone else if you want. Finally, or not finally, sorry, step 3, use the language from the focus box to make some sentences to support your argument. Okay, so this is basically the same as what I just said. So you're going to be using some of the statements that we learned here. And then finally, you're going to start presenting these conclusions to your class, your group members, or to yourself if you're watching this solo. That's okay. And just the main focus is remember to justify your opinion, things that make sense, make sure it's facts and experience. So if I tell you I think the earth is flat, you're going to ask for evidence or some sort of experience, something. So just make sure that it makes sense. If you're justifying something, make sure it's worth justifying and you're not saying anything for the sake of saying it, basically. So focus on justifying, read the difference between these two, and hopefully you'll be able to speak about it and make a compelling argument. Thank you. This was Unit 1. I hope you learned something new today. I hope you had fun, and I will see you in the next unit. Goodbye.